In what race is speed considered unimportant?
Why are more and more people going to school at home?
Who turns out perfect logs all the same size?
Where is a colonial inn still in operation?
Industry on parade. A brand new look at our America, produced on film each week by the National Association of Manufacturers.
Two officials of the American Automobile Association appropriate a brand new car in a California showroom. The dealer, taken completely unaware, is assured that he will be reimbursed. The automobile, in every respect like all the others of its particular make, available to the public everywhere, is to be entered in the Mobile Gas Economy Run, a most exacting road test where it'll be in competition with cars of other manufacturers. 20 automobiles seized in showrooms, on railroad cars, or even as they rolled off assembly lines, are impounded at Pasadena. Here they're checked to make sure they carry no special gadgets, then are tuned up under the watchful eye of AAA officials. When not on break-in runs or being tuned or inspected, the cars are guarded like the gold in Fort Knox. For there's plenty riding on the outcome of the 1,300-mile, 32-hour run to Sun Valley, Idaho. As departure hour nears, drivers and passengers are weighed in like so many jockeys at the General Petroleum Corporation garage in Los Angeles. Each car will carry exactly 750 pounds of personnel and luggage. Gasoline is measured out by the ounce. Even gasoline temperature is recorded. Weather predicted along the route is anything but good. However, they'll all be facing the same conditions. And as midnight strikes, here we go. Each car is pushed to the starting line. The run is 1,335 miles and not 1 foot more. The entries will leave 2 minutes apart. Destination on the first day's run, San Francisco, 554 miles and 13 hours away. 12:01, and off goes the first car. 12:03, the second car pulls away from the starting line. This is no race in the usual sense, with contestants careening at breakneck speed to reach the finish first. The sole objective here is to use the least possible amount of fuel in covering the specified ground within the time allowed. But just the same, they have to hustle, for to stay within the rules, each car must average at least 42 miles an hour over the entire course. A few miles beyond Merced, better than 3/4 of the way to San Francisco, the 20 cars pull in one at a time to the second of a series of refueling stations, where seals are taken off the gas tanks and the amount of gasoline supplied is carefully recorded. Then the tanks are sealed once more. Not a second is wasted, for the drivers want as much time as possible in order to drive at the most economical speeds called for by the conditions they encounter. The route to be covered includes 188 miles of stop-and-go city traffic in towns like San Francisco. The second day's run brings the first real taste of the weather extremes purposely planned on to duplicate, in 32 hours of driving time, everything the average motorist will encounter over an entire year. Now, the drivers fall back on minutes they might have saved up, and those who don't have any saved up must keep pushing. With chains on, that means increased gas consumption. Donner Summit, more than 7,100 feet above sea level. Here, a wagon train of 49ers perished in a storm, and another was wiped out by Indians. From the wintry heights, the caravan descends into the opposite extreme, desert heat. Finally, on the third day, the end of the run at Sun Valley is the occasion for an excited turnout of visitors staying at the resort. Order of arrival means nothing, but what does count is the amount of fuel used in carrying a given weight over the 1,300-mile course. And computing that in terms of ton miles will take time. The entrants all anxiously await the announcements of how their cars fared in competition with others in the same price and weight categories. Totting up all the data compiled from Los Angeles on, the judges come up with a number of winners. But actually, the entire automobile and petroleum industries come out winners every time. For year by year, improvements in fuels and engines permit us to carry greater weights farther with less gasoline than ever before.
In America, our standard of living has continued to rise steadily since early times. It has been rising at about the same rate as industry's investment in more and better equipment for making things. Today, 3 times as much money is invested for each manufacturing job as was invested some 35 years ago. An average of $12,000 in plant, tools, and equipment compared to $4,000. And in the same period, real wages, that is, the buying power of money wages, have more than doubled.
A student artist working at her lessons at home. That's where millions of students, regardless of their subject, do their work. They may have full-time jobs, or maybe they're invalids, or live too far away from the type of school they'd like to attend. So they turn instead, and with excellent results, to correspondence schools, with integrity and ability to produce results comparable to those of the strictest schools and colleges anywhere. Our student artist sends her work to Art Instruction Incorporated in Minneapolis. When she first began her studies, she received from the school all the necessary textbooks and paraphernalia for the course. To just about every corner of the world go the packages containing drawing boards, T-squares, triangles, brushes, pens, and other tools of the artist's trade. Back from students everywhere come the completed assignments. These go to the educational department, where experienced art instructors go over them carefully, reviewing, criticizing, grading the work. They sometimes spend as much as half a day on a single drawing. Here's the drawing we saw the young lady making earlier. He places an overlay on it, and on this he will now indicate where lines are off, shading is poor, or proportions are bad. He then will dictate a detailed verbal report on the student's progress, as revealed in her latest effort. A good percentage of the nation's successful artists were developed through correspondence courses, and this school proudly displays the work of some of its outstanding graduates. One such graduate, who has built a highly successful career, is the cartoonist Charles Schulz, who created the comic strip character Peanuts. It may not be art with a capital A, but it provides an awful lot of pleasure, and it pays.
What do lumber mills do with all the sawdust that results from their operations? Well, dozens of ways have been devised to put this byproduct of the lumber industry to good use. And here's one filmed at the Weyerhaeuser Timber Company plant in Longview, Washington. 14 giant machines like this compress the wood particles into what are called presto logs, short lengths just right for fireplace, stove, or furnace. The logs are fed automatically into a conveyor system that carries them away to the shipping room. The pressing machines, leased from the Wood Briquettes Company of Lewiston, Idaho, exert so much force on the sawdust that the finished product is virtually free of moisture. 7 cubic feet of sawdust have been compressed into a dense mass, held together by its own natural pitch and rosins, and weighing about 8 pounds. Railroad dining cars are among the big users of the logs because they burn so hot, clean and economically, and leave practically no ash. One more demonstration of how our conservation-minded forest products industries utilize every last part of the tree down to and including the dust that flies off the saws.
More than one half of America's 60 million working men and women are now employed in business and industries that didn't even exist 50 years ago. These new frontiers of work and achievement have been opened up in industries like chemicals, electronics, automotive, and atomic energy, all resulting from our unmatched research programs and our genius at invention, all possible only under our individual enterprise system. Our nation's constantly expanding industrial and business horizons offer high hope for the youth of our country. America is still the land of opportunity.
Coonamessett Lake on Cape Cod. A beautiful spot like this may seem miles removed from industry, but actually this resort hotel is a facet of American enterprise. In rambling old buildings like this one, any number of well-intentioned individuals have sought to establish inns of the type that flourished in colonial New England. Many such noble ventures have failed because their sponsors lacked the necessary managerial know-how to go along with their love of tradition. Not so here at the Treadway Inn. Fruit and books in every room, a sample of the sort of thing that characterizes a chain of 12 hotels, all of which specialize in hospitality, administered as it was in days long since gone by. A view isn't hard to provide when hotel grounds cover hundreds of acres, including a lake at the doorstep. For the most part, the grounds, though well kept up, are left pretty much as they have been for generations. There are concessions to the requirements of modern vacationers, though, as in a swimming pool and a private golf course. It's the knack of superimposing modern features like these on the Cape Cod countryside without destroying the charm of the place that spell the difference between a professional and an amateur innkeeper. Looks like the horses that aren't being ridden envy those that are. Easiest place of all for the amateur innkeeper to go astray is in the preparation and serving of food. Veteran chefs know nothing can drive away customers faster than a poor dinner at the end of an otherwise wonderful day. The answer to that is experience in the kitchen and in dining rooms quietly lighted and decorated with a combination of restraint and simplicity. And after dinner, the true colonial touch. A cheerful fire of the kind that stirred congeniality in visitors to ancient inns after a day of hard riding over poor roads in all kinds of weather. Generally speaking, no sensible person wants to turn back the clock, but in this case, it turned out to be a good idea.
Which old-time industries still flourish today?
How did the industrial past lead to a better future?
What manufacturing techniques came down from our forefathers?
Industry on Parade, Peabody Award winner for public service. Produced on film each week by the National Association of Manufacturers.
The manufacture of an old-fashioned wagon wheel in the second half of the 20th century. If you thought the automobile and truck had replaced the wagon, you're 99% correct. But that other 1% means plenty of business to firms like this one, which is still turning out thousands of wagons a year at the dawn of the jet age. Like the wheel spokes, the rims are also of wood, each one being made in halves, which then are hammered and pried into place in this manner. Meanwhile, as the wheel nears completion, preparation of the tire is underway in the blacksmith shop. We think of a tire as being of rubber, But this circle of metal was the article that first bore the name, and thus does another new wagon take shape. One of the many products perfected during the early days of American industry and still being manufactured today in much the same form our grandparents knew. In a modern horseshoe factory, electric power has replaced the back-breaking labor required years ago. But the basic design of the product hasn't changed at all. And this single plant still turns out some 8 million shoes a year to serve horses of all sizes and functions, on vacation trails, racetracks, farms, and TV screens, and even on a few city streets. Nail holes are punched by machines so efficient that just one of them can process 4,000 shoes a day, a rate of productivity that makes possible higher wages and shorter hours for the operator than were possible in days gone by. Kerosene lanterns. Modern manufacturing techniques have been applied to their manufacture too. Our ancestors, who depended on kerosene lamps for dining, reading, and other household routines, would have been justifiably amazed at the equipment used in their production nowadays. Not many homes depend on them anymore, but they're still in great demand for emergencies and for use on railroads, construction jobs, camping expeditions, and in areas beyond the reach of electricity. Meanwhile, demand is actually growing for the item being mass-produced here, candles, which are becoming as common in modern living and dining rooms as they were in colonial days. By the hundreds, cotton wicks are lowered repeatedly into a bath of molten wax with a drying period between each dip. In this way, little by little, the wax builds up around the wick until after 30 or more dips, the candles will be completely formed. The overworked housewife of America's early days counted candle making among her many duties. But today, candles are simply picked up at the supermarket, an old product that, like so many newer ones, is much more widely available at much lower prices, thanks to present-day methods of manufacture and distribution.
This plant helps light candles. It turns out wooden matches of the commonplace kitchen variety with the help of some very uncommon machines, which cut blocks of wood into splints, then fix them into an endless chain of metal plates. The endless chain carries the sticks along through one solution after another. It's a production system so efficient that this single plant can turn out 200 million matches a day. After passing over a drying drum, another dip gives the match its main bulb, and additional dips will add the tiny eye and a coating that will protect the match against changes in the weather. The safety match remains today virtually the same as it was when industry perfected it many years ago. An old-fashioned product in a sense, and one we've come to take for granted. But the match is so convenient, so useful, and so popular today that we use an average of 14 per person every 24 hours. As a result, more matches are manufactured than any other single product on Earth. Now, let's follow another batch of wood to see how clothespins are made, another old-time product with lasting popularity. The thousands of feet of birch lumber arriving at this plant each week will yield millions of clothespins, the plain kind with the knob on top, the kind grandmother liked to use. Odd-sized blocks and flaws are culled out by hand. Next, the wood moves on to an amazing machine that rounds the pins and turns the knobs almost faster than the eye can follow, and on to another that automatically cuts the slots in the pins. The slotter zips back and forth 100 times a minute, cutting a perfect slot every time. And And now the almost finished pins get another inspection before heading for the tumbers, where they'll be dried, bleached, and polished. Old-fashioned? Yes. But despite automatic laundry equipment, demand for the clothespin remains strong, a demand industry fills more efficiently every year. The American broom industry, largely built around the corn fibers we see being unloaded, dates back to Benjamin Franklin, who introduced broom corn to this country. This corn, after many centuries, still surpasses most other materials used for brooms, and brooms are still to be found in every home as a useful supplement to the more modern sweeper or vacuum cleaner. After being sorted according to length of fiber, the brush is shaken down so the ends are all lined up evenly. Now, the properly aligned stalks are ready for the next step. The hard ends are cut off, and the fibers are ready to be combed. This takes out strands that may be too short and lines up the perfect ones parallel to each other. In assembling the broom, the handle is brought together with 5 different lengths of fibers. But even when the winding is complete, there's still a lot to be done. Stray seeds and fibers not securely fastened to the handle are whipped off, and the broom is stitched on a machine that pushes gigantic needles through the brush to bind the fibers tightly together. When the end has been trimmed, another broom is finished, as useful today as when it was the only tool for cleaning a floor. The wooden barrel also achieved perfection of design centuries ago, the only possible improvements being in the methods of manufacture. A heavy ring will hold the staves together while the ends are being shaped. The cracker barrel, around which community life once revolved, is no longer with us as a center for town discussion, but barrels of the same size and shape, along with many others of different types, still are widely used as containers for everything from fish to nails. An 18-minute trip through a steam tunnel softens the wood fibers so that the staves can be bent. Here's how the ends are closed with the help of cables and temporary hoops. After a drying that firms up the wood in its new shape, the barrel gets additional temporary hoops, after which the ends are grooved to receive the barrel heads. Once the end, or head, has been placed in the proper groove, the staves are compressed, and the first permanent steel hoop is forced in place. Now, the outside of the barrel is smoothed off on a lathe and sander. The heat generated in this operation causes the wood to expand slightly, so it's not until after the barrels have cooled that the remaining hoops are put on and driven home. Finally, the barrel must be lined with a coating, in this case, paraffin. And so another barrel is finished, just about the only container ever built that comes complete with its own wheels built in.
Even when it comes to the construction of houses, we Americans find much to admire in the styles and techniques originated by our forefathers. The Cape Cod house, the colonial, even the log cabin are still in great demand today, although with certain drastic refinements now that keep them in step with the high standard of living modern industry has brought us. Today, the logs, cut straight and true with power saws, interlock to provide a sure fit and block out drafts. They're raised into place by chain falls and cranes. They're treated, if necessary, for insect resistance. caulked, and insulated. But the building they form remains a log cabin still, a direct descendant of the one in which Abe Lincoln was born. Throughout the basic house, the builders won't use more than 20 nails. The various logs will hold themselves together, a trick we inherited from those ingenious ancestors of ours and were able to improve upon thanks to modern power tools and other recent industrial innovations. That's been the story of progress in this country, taking the knowledge and skills gained in the past and developing from them more efficient methods of production to make products cheaper and better and to produce new products for modern needs. In factories all across the land, industrialists have found that more than reinvestment of knowledge and skill is needed to keep our economy prosperous. Money must be plowed back, too. Money to pay for the development of the new products, to buy more efficient machinery, and to install the latest processes. Much of this money must come from what industry has left over after all the bills are paid, from what is known as profit. After the government gets its share, amounting in most cases to over 50%, and investors are paid dividends, the rest of industry's profits are used to create the new ideas and new methods that mean more and better jobs and higher living standards for all Americans.
American industry, builder of a better tomorrow, has presented Industry on Parade, a service of the National Association of Manufacturers.
On film each week by the National Association of Manufacturers.
Industry on Parade visits a farm on which originates 1/3 of all the cotton produced in the United States. No, all those tons of cotton aren't grown here, but the seed from which they come is. And the development of fine planting seed is an advanced science, calling for extensive research plus a lot of diligent labor in cross-breeding the different varieties to take advantage of one's tendency to mature early and of another's high yield of lint. Pollination is all done by hand. Nothing can be left to the whim of bees or the wind, which have no regard for the improvement of the nation's cotton crop. And such improvement is the constant goal of the people of this farm that's run like a factory, the 38,000-acre farm of the Delta and Pine Land Company of Scott, Mississippi. Actually, the farm does contain some real factories and offices to run them. There's a research department that can tell you everything there is to know about the soil in every square foot of the farm's vast acreage. The horticulturist here puts away sample seeds in a germination oven to learn how each reacts to various climatic conditions the oven can simulate. He tests not only seed for cotton, but for rice, soybeans, wheat, and oats, other seed crops produced here. With 1,200 employees, hundreds of trucks, tractors, and other rolling stock, and thousands of head of cattle, it takes a good-sized office staff to keep the wheels running. Everything is organized. They know months in advance that during the 3rd week in April, a certain field will be fumigated, while another is being planted in this crop or that. Department heads work out and coordinate the plans at meetings like those held in any efficient organization. They discuss ways of best utilizing manpower, land, processing plants, equipment, livestock, always with an eye on next year and the year after and 10 years from now. Employees either get their homes rent-free or pay nominal rents, like $20 a month. Scientific farming is on the increase in this country. The techniques that have made our industry great are being applied now to agriculture with comparable success.
For generations from the 4 corners of the world, people came to America to find personal freedom. Here they found religious freedom, where they could worship in a church of their choice, political freedom, where they could cast their ballots for a candidate of their choice, academic freedom, which has meant better education for all, and finally, economic freedom, a private enterprise system which has enabled all of us to attain the highest standard of living known to man. Under this system, they found opportunity which gave them the personal choice of where they wanted to work and at a job of their own choosing. Each of us must guard those freedoms which have made America great.
Water skiing. In just a few years, it has grown from a mere curiosity into a full-fledged water sport with as many fine points and avid participants as many sports that people have been enjoying for generations. Adherents insist nothing else offers the thrills of water skiing, and they say it isn't nearly as dangerous as it looks. In case of a spill, you've always got nice, soft water to fall into. A small but growing industry has developed to keep water skiers supplied with the one essential piece of equipment required, other than a friend with a motorboat. Here at Ply Curves Incorporated in Grand Rapids, Michigan, a subsidiary of the Sly Lowry Furniture Company, water skis are molded of marine plywood, whose 7 plies are bonded and bent into ski shape simultaneously on this powerful press. Electronic heat and pressure of 200 pounds per square inch cause a synthetic resin glue to merge the 7 plies into a unit much stronger than any board of the same thickness. The company was formed to supply custom-molded plywood for the world-famous Grand Rapids furniture industry, so water skiers benefit from the same care and craftsmanship that go into, say, a fine desk or chest of drawers. Here, a piece of plywood that will produce 3 water skis is fed into a machine in which the ends are squared off. One of the advantages of plywood is that its 7 layers do not all run in the same direction. Thus, it has no grain and no weak spots. A comforting thought for the furniture buyer, but even more comforting to a water skier, clipping off the tops of waves at 50 miles an hour. Now we see the panel being rip-sawed into 3 sections, each of which will be a ski. Clamped to a pattern, the ski's point is rounded off. The dimensions of the ski and its every contour have very important bearing on how it moves through the water, just as the shape of the wings of an airplane affect its flying characteristics. Modern sanding machines are remarkably effective, but they require the most delicate touch on the part of the operator if the surface is to be flat as well as smooth. Now the ski will have holes drilled for toe plates and the fin that keeps the ski moving straight ahead instead of veering off in any and all directions. After finishing and the application of hardware, the ski will be ready to carry some enthusiast on the ride of his life. And of all the water ski enthusiasts, there happens to be none more enthusiastic than the president of the company whose factory we have just visited. Here at the Beverly Ski Club at Mayo, Maryland, is Mr. Charles Schulz, head of the National Association of Manufacturers and former national water skiing champion. A man of 47, he still can show the youngsters a thing or two about the sport he helped establish. He signals the driver to give her all she's got, and away we go. This is really a case of keeping your best foot forward.
Atlanta, Georgia, and the headquarters of what you might call the modern Pied Pipers of Hamlin. In this day and age, playing a pretty tune on a piccolo won't get you very far as an exterminator of rats or any of the other pests that prey on man and his goods and property. Now you've got to be up to the minute on late developments in chemistry and science generally. Many hours are devoted to studying under experts like those on the staff of the Orkin Exterminating Company, learning the habits of the enemy and the ways of contending with them. It was pretty simple in the fairy story, but pests don't trail after anybody. They've got to be sought out. And their hiding places can be pretty deceptive. Even a solid-looking mansion like this can be victim to billions of termites that could steadily eat away inside its walls, reducing it to a porous shell that eventually couldn't even support its own weight. Termites cause millions of dollars worth of property loss each year, chiefly because they can do their dirty work for so long before their presence is suspected. By that time, it's often too late to prevent extensive damage. One reason why so many of the exterminating company's customers now contract for them to call regularly, to inspect the premises and take preventive measures long before this develops. There are many ways of contending with the problem. After the termites' progress through the building has been stopped with liquids and gases, the important thing is to seal off the wooden parts of the structure from the soil out of which the termites come. And one way to do that is by poisoning a narrow strip of earth all around the house right next to the foundation. For other pests, other treatments. Everything from A to Z, from arsenic to zinc phosphide. And in every form, sprays, fogs, gases, dusts, liquids, each with its own peculiar effectiveness against one particular enemy and each requiring special equipment, much of it devised by the company's own technicians. Here, a public dump is freed of objectionable visitors. In this case, a play spot gets the treatment to eliminate flies, mosquitoes, water bugs, and the like. Even more important than the benefits of insect-free recreation is the extermination of rodent and insect life in homes and businesses, where in addition to causing extensive property damage, they comprise one of the greatest hazards to public health. Not only here at the lake, but everywhere, we depend on our exterminating industry to hold that hazard to a minimum and eventually, perhaps, eliminate it altogether.
We Americans possess a priceless ingredient which is at a premium in today's troubled world. The ingredient is faith. Faith inherited from our forefathers who forged a nation out of a wilderness. Pioneers who crossed this nation and built great cities on plain and wasteland. America's unshakable faith in God and country enabled us to build, to grow, to prosper in a nation of free men and women. No one from within or from without will ever destroy this nation if we strengthen our faith in our spiritual, political, and economic way of life.
A couple of Sunday mechanics trying to fix Junior's runabout? No, this is Dr. V.K. Zworykin, pioneer television and electronic scientist of the Radio Corporation of America, and his miniature automobile could hold the answers to some of our most serious highway problems. The little car, built here at the David Sarnoff Research Center in Princeton, New Jersey, is packed with electronic equipment that may be duplicated in full-scale automobiles of the future. It can send and receive radio signals to and from other cars, and also from a wire representing a cable that would be laid in the roadbed of a superhighway. Signals received are translated into automatic stops or changes of speed and direction. Rain and fog don't mean a thing. What happens when the electronic automobile approaches a car that's stalled? Well, the wires in the pavement sense the presence of any metallic object, like an automobile, and automatically detour oncoming cars into the other lane. A slow-moving car would deflect a faster-moving vehicle overtaking it in the same way by leaving a radio tail in the warning circuits buried in the highway. And if the other lane is occupied, brakes are automatically applied and the car comes to a halt. Dr. Zworykin admits completely automatic control of automobiles is still far off, but feels electronics can solve at least some driving problems. And through industrial research efforts like this, the time may yet come when we'll be able to cruise down the highway in perfect safety, even while reading a magazine.